All right, hello. Welcome. We're going to talk on this podcast about the Raymond Lewis documentary. We're going to get in depth about the basketball icon from Watts, California. We're going to talk about a couple things. We want to get in depth a little bit more about everything on the documentary. So we have a special guest with us today, and I'll gladly introduce you. Her name is Kamilah Rae Lewis. This is Raymond Lewis's daughter. And she came here to answer some questions and talk to us about the Raymond Lewis documentary. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Of
So
course.
definitely we're going to get in depth about this. So I have some questions. So one of the questions I wanted to know was, what are the best memories of your father? What are some things that you remember best about your father, about his habits, about different things around the house? What do you remember?
Some of my fondest memories of my father are probably not necessarily basketball related, but um, he was just him being a dad. He was a very strict dad. It was me and my brother, and he was passionate about our education, passionate about what we ate and us exercising, passionate about us reading a certain amount of minutes per night. And then we have a huge family in Los Angeles. So spending time with them, making sure we went to church every Sunday. Um, those are some of the fondest memories I have of my father. And we both also share a love of sports in general. One of the first autobiographies I read at a very young age was the autobiography of Muhammad Ali, because my father told me to. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, um, definitely.
Nah, that's definitely awesome to know. You know, for most athletes, Muhammad Ali is the top of the top. Um,
Right.
so you said something about your family. I noticed in the documentary it was a big family. Looks like you had a lot of uncles and aunties and cousins and everything to that nature. I was wondering, was anyone in the family really good at sports?
He had, I think, 18 aunts and uncles. And so from all of them, I have a plethora of cousins. And so does Raymond. So they were all great at certain things. Raymond's dad was an amateur boxer. Raymond's
Oh, nice.
grandfather was in a baseball player, but in the Negro League. And so they had talents, right? And I ran track. I ran track. I was good.
Yeah.
But Raymond was a once in a lifetime talent, and I think anyone in the family would tell you it was something uh,
Makes you
no one
laugh.
has seen before. He before he played basketball, he played baseball and was amazing. He played quarterback and was amazing. So he triple
Oh,
sported, and he could have went either way. Like seriously. So I do remember this house. My dad grew up here after his parents divorced.
another thing I was gonna ask about, see, coming up here in Watts, I noticed in the documentary they talked about the family. I'm guessing your grandpa was an entrepreneur, and
Hmm.
he came from an affluent home. You know, for those, there's a connotation about Watts. You know, like I grew up in
Right,
L.A. Like there's a connotation of what Watts is and what
right.
Watts represents. But what do you know about that time of him growing up?
Well, Raymond had two sides of his family. His mother and his father's side, both huge. His mother's side, extremely huge. Both of his grandparents were entrepreneurs. One from Watts,
Oh,
grandfather Grigsby. After the Watts riots, he bought up a bunch of property,
oh,
and so yeah, we lived in Watts, but he owned all of 110th and all of 111th. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So he was a real estate maintenance construction
Yeah.
guy, and then his other grandfather, who was from Compton, when Compton was uh, black upper middle class on
Yeah.
Visalia Street, they owned a liquor store, a meat market. So we always repped Watts like it was. It didn't have a negative connotation to us. We loved Watts because that's where we were from. That's where his grandfather was proud of the properties that he owned, and then that's where Bourbon Day was. So
Yeah.
I always grew up loving Watts.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Because a lot of time people don't understand that about Compton and Watts, the
Hmm.
communities that they actually were before, and then the riots and other things that happened along those lines that kind of separated uh those lines. So that's good. Just for the viewers, just
Yeah,
in case that's something really good to know. I also
yeah.
like to
I
know.
still have a love for Watts. So
Yeah, definitely. That's the motherland,
right,
Yep,
right.
yep, yep. Um, so how about your grandmother, Raymond's mother?
Mm.
Inside the documentary, it didn't say much about her. So
Mhm.
I was wondering a little bit about her as mother.
So her name is Ella
Yeah,
Lewis.
yeah.
Raymond is the first of four children, the eldest, and they have always been extremely close from what I understood, and what I witnessed as well up until death. They were extremely close.
Yeah.
Raymond took his mother's word and her advice over a lot of other people's. They were so close that when Raymond moved out, when he was dating my mom, they moved out. Ella moved right downstairs in the next apartment
Yeah.
without him knowing.
Huh.
So, um, so that's how close they were.
Yeah.
I emulated to a LeBron and his mother's story.
Yes. Okay.
I can resonate with that. Yeah.
Okay. So that probably, you think that may have had something to do with his drive in the sports and everything, or he just was always like that and family supported him and he carried that on, or was it maybe like to make mom proud, to make dad proud, or more so
Um,
than anything?
I think of course Ella is always been a driving factor for my father. To make her proud, but he had a natural affinity for the love of sports.
Yeah.
My father was a statistical genius and could tell you the stats of boxers, baseball players, basketball players, soccer players, both here and internationally. So,
Mm.
um, people know him as this great basketball player, but he loves sports overall. And from what I understand, the reason that he chose basketball is because he had a hip injury from playing quarterback, and he was in a body cast from the
Mm.
waist down. And so his brothers and sisters made him a shift hoop. And so for a month laying on his back, all he did was shoot hoops. And so that kind of made him say, okay, I'm going to, and plus that injury, right? That football injury, right?
Yeah.
Made him go ahead and have a love for, to put his dedication into basketball.
And then we would go to Long Beach and we would run from pier to pier every day. And that's like 2.5 miles. We would sprint. I'll follow him, he'll follow me. And then we would leave from there. And then we go to Gardenia and we play basketball. So we played it every single day.
It looked at times like it was just effortless. Like it
Yeah,
looked
yeah.
like, oh, he, even when he was at practice doing an interview, it looks like he was like looking away, shooting the ball, but it looked like at times everything he did was effortless. But from what I hear from you, is he had a crazy work ethic. So can you
Mhm.
speak about that a little bit? His work
So ever
ethic?
since he was a child, from what I hear, to that story I just told you about shooting hoops with a rolled up sock and a makeshift
Mhm.
hoop,
Yeah.
he ate, drank, and slept basketball. That's what he decided to do. So once he decided to focus on basketball, you could find Raymond at um, any playground shooting until midnight. His mom would have to come and get him, and find him, and that was every day of his
Wow.
life. Raymond played basketball, and if he wasn't playing basketball, he was jumping rope. He always ate good, worked out religiously. He was definitely a connoisseur of the sport. So although he makes it look easy, he trained and trained himself and learned how to train himself well.
To be that good, you definitely have to. I knew it was something to it, but
Hmm.
just looking at it, it looks like everybody said, "Man, he just caught on the court, dropped his bag, and then went to
Right.
work." But
Because he had already put the work in other places. He loved to be by himself. He loved to train by himself. When we were in LA, I remember him running in these ravines in LA by himself, up and down the ravine, in the water, out the water, weights on his foot, and jogging on the beach in Long Beach. So, you know, he got himself in shape.
What was something that the documentary didn't cover that you might could tell us? Something that we might not know that that could have been included, or it could be in part 2, or something else.
Life is a novel in itself, just imagine, if you had a talent like Kobe Bryant who never made it to the league, he has a bunch of backstories. Of course, like anyone else, my mom and him met in college. They have a love story of their own, Raymond was extremely grounded and religious, I think, and then some of the people that came around even when I was born, because of course I was born a couple of years after he was drafted, right?
Yeah.
I remember seeing Tarkanian in our living room. I remember seeing Sonny Vaccaro in our living room. I remember getting my first pair of shoes were Jordans, the first Jordans, right? And me and my brother didn't want to wear them because we didn't know who Michael Jordan was.
Yeah.
I remember seeing Dr. J in our living room and some other entertainers because I thought that was normal, right? So there's other sides to it. There's more to the story that, of course, we couldn't cover in this time we had. But Raymond lived a full life, a full life.
Yeah, because like I said, it kind of went so fast, and it made it seem like he was trying to get drafted, and then that it worked. But then it had this period where I just wondered where we went after that. I know what happened in the doc, but yeah.
He ended up having to be sort of a stay-at-home dad, right? Because my mom had to go to work, and whenever Raymond tried to work, the first thing that people would say was, "Well, aren't you Raymond Lewis? What you doing here?" And it could be a good job, a good warehouse job, but he if all you knew and what you were born to do was to play basketball, that might sound petty to other people, but it put him in a level of depression, all over again, and having to tell this story every time he saw someone, it was a lot.